President Bola Tinubu on Wednesday told the Nigerian Guild of Editors to exercise their watchdog role with fairness and patriotism, saying criticism of government must not be at the expense of national unity or affect the country's global image. The president charged the editors that irresponsible reporting and misinformation could undermine national cohesion and democratic stability. Tinubu hailed the Nigerian media's courage during the military era, honoring journalists who endured intimidation, detention, and hardship in defense of national ideals. Joining us on the show to review the rapprochement between the media and the federal government following the successful hosting of the NGE's meeting by President Bola Tinubu, if this signals a new era, is Professor Okey Ikechukwu, Executive Director of Development Specs Academy. Good morning, Professor Ikechukwu, and you're most welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, Ayo, and good morning to Ruben and Rufai.
Thank you, sir.
Good to be here.
Yes, Professor Ikechukwu, good to have you on the program. Very quickly, the 21st All Nigeria Editors Conference in Abuja, the opening ceremony was at the Villa. President Tinubu, the first sitting president of Nigeria to host at the opening ceremony of the Guild of Editors Conference. That in itself is historic. But he then used the opportunity to address the theme of democratic governance and national cohesion and the role of editors. And he talked about responsible journalism. He says dissent is welcome, debate is allowed, but journalists also have a responsibility to verify their information, to be fair, to be balanced, and to promote the objective of national unity and avoid misinformation. What do you think of this charge by President Bola Tinubu to Nigerian editors, both print, broadcast, and I guess online?
Well, I think that he's not making a new point when you think of global journalism and international diplomacy. There is what you call national interest reporting. It doesn't mean telling lies about your country, but there's information about your country that you don't make headlines. And I'll cite an example. Let us suppose you get some information on, there's some security-related activities going on, and you get some information about troop movement. That's not what you announce, because you announce it, if you report it, you're giving the enemy a heads up. The concern for him, and which we all share to an extent, is that the media should be seen to be more concerned about bad news not going out there, while not denying that it exists. But one essential point to note: the media that reports something is reporting what it is seeing. If that media is also part of a conversation about how to manage these things, as you see in other countries, the CNN we watch is not the CNN you watch in America. Most nations' civic education is such that by the time you move out of even primary school to secondary school and you're going to tertiary, there are things that you know do not become part of public conversation. So you find that nations that have actually more restrictive media attitudes are the ones talking about all kinds of ideals, which we then sometimes take to the extreme. If you take, for instance, the Freedom of Information Bill. It is there, and from a supervision point of view, you can say, we are free, they can give us any information. No, nobody can or should give you critical national information. So I believe the benefit of the president's comment is simple. For the media to do a kind of self-examination, do a reassessment and agree or disagree with the president. What has been the pattern of our reporting as editors, who are the managers at the top of all media output? What percentage of the reportage can be said to be sensational? Are some of our media houses going beyond criticism to outright condemnation? Are they not balanced? It's on the basis of that one can respond. So we can't say, because the president has spoken. Sorry.
But there is a caveat. You use the phrase national interest.
Yeah.
How do you strike the balance between national interest and public interest? Public interest in this regard being the people's right to know.
Oh, for me, as far as I'm concerned, I actually don't see any difference between the two. National interest, the nation refers primarily to the people, not the government. So if you want a distinction, you will make a distinction. I will make a distinction between national or people's interest and regime interest. Those are two different things. If you go back to the military era, remember that it was regime interest that made, that made General Gowon not to remove gun work. So regime interest is another matter. I will not recommend that the media drives regime interest. The people have a right to know. The media has a duty to report. But there are also channels through which certain types of information ought to go. The concern is sensationalizing every piece of information which could inflame certain things. Okay, for instance, there's been a perspective, usually from the security side, that when every act of sabotage by the insurgents is headlined in all the newspapers, that it gives oxygen to the activities, it makes people more afraid, and then they say, yes, they can see that. If they stone down the reporting, if it's not headline but is in the news, you're still reporting the incident. If in addition to having it in the media, bureau chiefs are also enabled to have some kind of interface at all the levels where they are, it's still reportage. But it will be unfair to the media that for us to demand it doesn't report what it sees. It will then be much more unfair to the nation for the media to be suspected to be unintentionally, and in some cases perhaps intentionally, pushing narratives that take strong steps. First, not just about bad news all the time, but also has a demoralizing effect on the, on the military and security apparatus.
All right. Professor Ikechukwu, I can understand that because it's very difficult sometimes to not blur the line between sensitivities like that and the job and the role of the media as the fourth estate of the realm. Let me ask you a question, because the President in his speech had said that he backs press freedom. But do Nigerian journalists, do the media in Nigeria
he did.
truly...
I didn't get that expression.
That he backs press freedom. Backs press freedom, in support of press freedom. Do we truly enjoy press freedom in Nigeria? I say this in light of recent legislation around cybersecurity crime, and this has been used in some instances to target some journalists who have reported, news as dissent into the views of the government. I can give an example of Friday Alefia, who is the publisher of Nigeria News Today. He wrote a report on a lawmaker, and now he's been targeted. The Cyber Crimes Act has kicked into, and he's been taken to court. So what's your assessment of press freedom in Nigeria under this administration?
Well, I will say that relatively speaking, if we're really to talk objectively, looking across all media, digital media, traditional media, television and the rest of it, we cannot speak of freedom. But if we're saying, are there things this government has done which rankles with the people, like the example you cited and a few others? The answer is yes. Now, for me, moving from those instances of questionable, if you ask me, questionable interventions with the media output of our fellow journalists, moving from there to speak of lack of press freedom in Nigeria is a long journey. But are there things that have been done that we think is inappropriate? Yes, that example in particular. The other thing, even to take it further, is to ask, that law, the details of that law, is that how it should be? Is it not more targeted at protecting individuals, in which case I'm speaking of regime security, rather than broader national interest? I think the wording of it is too restrictive, and that's why they could go for the person or the peoples they've gone for. No, we can speak of actions of government that clearly cannot be seen as appropriate if you're talking about press freedom. But to say we don't have press freedom, I would then want to go by evidence-based declarations that, okay, out of maybe 50 daily newspapers, X number, 35 have been harassed. Out of online that is more than 100, if you don't have that kind of statistics, the emphasis would be on inappropriate media interventions by government as distinct from a wholesale declaration of lack of press freedom. We listen to commentaries, even commentaries are here on our rise. One of the most informed, objective a good deal of the time. You listen to other media houses, and some of them devastating criticisms. But the difference is that what you get from Arise and some other stations and you people is a critique, which is pointing out what is wrong and then making input as to how you can be different, as different from just grumbling, complaining, and leaving it at that. Now, that's mature media activity. That's mature media engagement. Okay. And it's allowed. Let's be frank about it. Okay. You're moving from there to now say there's no, that might be a bit of an exaggeration.
In fact, Aya was correct. With due respect, Professor Aya was correct. I'm giving you empirical facts. I don't talk without it. Nigeria in 2024 ranks 112th, and Nigeria, in the regional context, said to be is among the most difficult, challenging countries for journalists in West Africa, where political violence, arbitrary decision, destruction of media transmitters, and everything exacerbate risk, and it's pervasive. Badegi FM is one of them. A governor of Niger State actually told them to shut down Badegi FM because he felt the narrative was not going in his favor. So it's quite a very difficult and challenging environment. I want you to explain the context of when government wants you, as the press, to be sycophantic and to run propaganda for the regime rather than to be able to explain things. And I'll give you an instance. I once made a commentary about the level of borrowing that is unprecedented in the country, and the government spokesperson called me an economic illiterate for stating the obvious and the empirical facts about borrowing. And a government spokesperson, Mr. Bayonuga, called me. He called me an economic illiterate. Started berating me, pouring verbiage on me for stating the obvious as regards borrowing. And the question is, by calling me an economic illiterate, does he pay back all the loans we are taking? So, how can you make the decision between government that wants to do propaganda? Because of what the president said, is propaganda for regime I'm hearing, and sycophantic outputs.
The question.
Yes. Quickly, sir.
I understand the question. The journalist who goes out to be sycophantic towards the government has no business calling himself a journalist. He has a duty to report facts, to interpret them objectively as far as possible, and also commend government if it has done something good, and do a critique if it has done something bad so that it will correct itself. The day all you do is endorse government as a professional journalist, from that day you cease to be a journalist. The day all you do is to condemn government without giving it any credit at all is also the day you cease to be an objective speaker. So to that extent, your question is simple, and I think the answer is embedded in it. That is not your duty as a journalist. At the same time, your duty is not that of also a disruptor. Now, the reactions that may come from it is a different matter. That could depend on the temperament of the person speaking with you, or the facts he has, which maybe is not available to you, and which is then saying, probably at the back of my mind, I have certain facts. Thinking that you also have the facts, I'm saying, how could you say this sort of thing when this, but I don't have those facts. So no, Rufai, my friend, there cannot be any question of journalists becoming, you cease to be believable. Even the government you're trying to serve loses mileage, because when you then begin to speak, they say, oh, okay, that one is for government. But if you're also on the other extreme, and anytime you want to talk, say, no, please, I want some peace. This one never sees anything good in us. Those are the two extremes to avoid. It's on the basis of that somebody can then say, oh, in journalism, facts are sacred. Opinion is free. The journalist must know when he's stating facts, he cannot apologize for facts. He must know when he's stating opinion, he must not present his opinion as the truth. Now, to create a balance of objectivity is that neither party should see you to be for or against them, but you are for national interest. And national interest is not necessarily the people's interest even, or the regime interest. The people may be actually uninformed. You're talking, we've been having elections where people willingly accept to be bribed. It is not in the national interest, not in the people's interest. So sometimes the people also do something for which the journalists will say no. So I'd like us to see a national interest. Okay. Objectively, that's something that if you do and when you do and continue, the country. Okay, yeah, Ruben.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, okay, I'm not hearing.
Ruben Abate.
Thank you. The Ijele chief. Thank you. Anyway.